Hi, I'm Amy Hummer. I am the owner and qualifying broker of Better Homes and Gardens Real Estate, Steinborn and Associates. Today, joining me is Zane Fikany. You want to tell them a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so I've been selling real estate in Las Cruces since 2005. I'm a proud graduate of NMSU, which I think we're going to cover a little bit and touch on that here in a minute. But I'm happy to be here with you, and I'm certainly excited to talk real estate.
We thought we'd give you a little context of why we wanted to kind of have a conversation with you today and a conversation with each other. If you haven't read it, there is an article that recently came out in the Wall Street Journal. It's titled, "Housing Market in This Small City Took a Long Road to Recovery." It came out on June 6th, I believe. And it speaks to Las Cruces directly. And we thought it brought up some interesting points. It has a narrative that we thought had some topics that we really could expand on and share with you. So it is written by Ben Eisen and Nicole Friedman. So if you want to take a second and go pull that article up, make sure you go onto the Wall Street Journal and pull that article up.
Yeah, and you know, we're always happy when Las Cruces enters the national news. Good, bad, we'll take any publicity. But this is kind of close to home when we're talking real estate and what we do for a living. So we certainly kind of want to touch base on that. And the story is basically about an NMSU economics professor and how she's taking what she's learned in her home buying experience and homeowner experience and sharing it with her classes. And so we certainly wanted to take the perspective as realtors, as people that love and bleed both NMSU and Las Cruces, what our thoughts on this article were. And certainly we have lots of people in the community that have sent them to me, people have sent them to you. It certainly started a conversation, and we want to continue that conversation. So please comment, send us what your thoughts are. We're certainly happy to talk about them. But we want to give you just a little bit of perspective on this Wall Street Journal article.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting what you just brought up, that for those that have seen it, we've heard from buyers in our market, we've heard from sellers, homeowners, we've heard from business leaders, we've heard from mortgage bankers to business owners to all kinds of different people in the community. And that's really kind of interesting when people see that and then they want to engage in this conversation and really kind of understand what's going on in the real estate market and our community in general, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, I've always thought real estate touches all of us. Not everybody owns real estate, but you still live somewhere. You're still, going to school and going to work, and everybody has a vested interest in real estate. So when an article like this comes out, I'm always amazed by how many people then reach out to us. But being that we all eat and breathe real estate every day, maybe I shouldn't be so surprised.
Well, and a tidbit to add to that is, what June is right now, National Association of Realtors, it's National Homeownership Month. So also another great opportunity to kind of hear about what homeownership means in the Las Cruces and southern New Mexico market, right?
Absolutely.
Good. Well, let's approach this from, what I'd like is for Zane, after we read through this, this professor really had some things to share about her experience of home ownership. So I was going to have Zane kind of start off and kind of talk about what we took from her journey in home ownership in our market.
Yeah, absolutely. So Mrs. Downes is the professor here that is highlighted in this Wall Street Journal article. And I don't know Mrs. Downes. Hopefully someday maybe we'll have this conversation with her as well. Certainly Chris Erickson from NMSU, we both know. He's been a past client as well. He has a quote in here as well. So Las Cruces is a small world, small town mentality. I graduated from the business school. You're certainly very involved in NMSU. So we've got a lot of friends involved in this as well. But what the article basically takes place, Mrs. Downes purchased her home in 2007. And she purchased the home off of Las Cruces. So it's really close to NMSU. It's close to the NMSU golf course. It's kind of perfect location for where a professor might want to live. And she purchased the house for $212,000. What basically the article highlights is that it took a long time for the value of that home to get back to what she paid for it. And that's certainly something that I'm empathetic towards, because I've been in the business since 2005. I've sold houses to people who then needed to turn around and sell them at some point and had no equity in the home. The house was worth less than what it was when they bought it. And I'll tell you, there's no harder conversation for a realtor than the conversation of sitting at that kitchen table telling the homeowner that the house isn't worth what you bought it for, it's not worth what you owe, and you're gonna have to bring money to the table.
You've had this conversation, just like what she talks about. She talks about the emotional stress of that journey with a home, the value. They relocated at one point in their life and now have returned back to southern New Mexico, back to living in that house. And just the stress that value and those conversations have had on her as well.
Yeah, absolutely. We've sat down and had endless conversations with people and saying, these are your options. This is where you are. And sometimes you can't sugarcoat that conversation when you say, hey, your house is underwater. You can't sell it for what you owe. But it's part of the job that we have to do. And if you're going to be in this business long term, you're going to see the down cycles, the up cycles, everything in between. And it's important that you're able to deliver that with empathy, but also that you're able to deliver the truth. The last thing we want to do is make false promises. Absolutely, your house is worth $1 million. When people's largest investment is their home, it's important that you're brutally honest about it and that they know exactly where they stand. You don't want any surprises.
Well, we talk about that a lot in our company, that we're their trusted advisor. And so you have to go to the table with the right information, with what the market statistics are actually saying. And you're right, those can be hard conversations, and she experienced that in the journey with her home.
Yeah, absolutely. And she mentioned that it's not about the numbers, but it's the emotion and everything that comes with it, and we certainly see that. And it's a tough time. People that have lost their houses or had to short sell their houses or weren't able to sell and had to stay in a place that they really weren't happy with, those are tough discussions. And after I leave and they have the discussions with their family, it's a tough time. It's a bad feeling.
Yeah.
And it's not a feeling that any of us want, and it's certainly not news that any of us want, but it is part of what we have to deliver sometimes. Now, Mrs. Downes, was in a unique situation in that when her husband was relocated, they tried to sell the house. The house was on the market almost a year and it didn't sell. She dropped the price to below what she had actually purchased the house for, and it still didn't sell at that point. So at that point, her family decided, hey, we're going to rent this house. We're going to go on and move to Georgia, I believe it was. And she didn't make money every month in the rent, but she was still making that mortgage payment. And you have to give her credit for that. It's not always easy to keep up with those mortgage payments and keep those promises that you made to that lender, but she did. And in the long run, I think it was the right decision.
Well, and I think you shared a quote with me earlier about real estate and when is the right time to invest or buy real estate. Share that quote again.
Yeah, there's an old adage, and I certainly can't take credit for it, but it basically says, I would rather buy real estate and wait than wait to buy real estate. And as I went through this article, I think this is a good example of that, because she bought the house at a specific time. When she was ready to sell it, the market wasn't ready for her to sell. But the article also talks about now the house being worth enough money to not only sell it, but now to make a profit. She was able to withstand, the downturn, and now the housing market is, of course, much better, much stronger, and her house is worth substantially more.
Yes.
So now she has equity in the home that she could cash out if she wanted to. She has a lot of opportunities now, and it was because she was able to withstand that downturn, and she stuck with it. People that stick with real estate in the long term win. Right. Short term, you can't always win.
Right.
Long term, you can win.
Tacking on to that, so the article explains that in today's market, according to some estimates that the authors received from Zillow, it has a market value of what, $323,000 is what they said. So that it shows you from $212,000 at purchase price up to $323,000 in today's market.
Right, and when you start to calculate, the payments that she made on the house and the principal, and then the rent that she got and everything, she's probably sitting at what, $175,000 in equity right now.
Yes.
And over the course of 15 years, I don't know about you, but my investment accounts
I
certainly
know
have not
that
done
is
that.
that is a nice return, isn't it?
Yeah.
I thought about
Yeah.
that as well. Now, you and I both acknowledge that we haven't done a comparative market analysis on it. I think that's what we do best as realtors, is we have data through our multiple listing service that we can do an analysis on the value of a home to advise someone on what they should be listing the house for. And we're going off of what Zillow has provided, and we're not really sure where all their data came from or how they calculated it, but that is what's stated in the article.
It is. The article kind of specifies Zillow as their source of information several times. Certainly for us in the real estate industry, that's not our go-to source for numbers and values and so forth. And we've never been in that house, so we really don't have the ability to pinpoint exactly what the house is worth today.
Right.
But certainly we do have all the information that would allow us to pinpoint what that is, if that's what we wanted to do at that time.
Another point I wanted to bring up and get your thoughts on this one, Zane, is that they do talk about in the article that it wasn't until just recently that we returned to our average home sale prices since the downturn in 2007. We went back in our data. Z Real Estate does a great job of going through their data, making sure that they understand all the market statistics. And the market really says that in September of 2020 is when we returned to those average sales prices, back from when she purchased in 2007. So I think that says a lot about our market and how it is more robust than I think in some ways you walk away from this article thinking.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things that we both took away, and certainly the people that sent us the article took away from it, was a little bit of a negative light on the economics of Las Cruces. And certainly we're biased because we both love Las Cruces. We bleed Las Cruces. And certainly when you start to talk about our industry, we become a little bit defensive as well. But I think that Las Cruces is a robust economy filled with great people. I think that's our number one asset, is there's great people here. And certainly values have continued to increase, and values of homes have increased as well. And what she's kind of getting at in the article is when you buy at the peak, maybe it's a mistake to buy at that peak. But once you fast forward those 15 years, I've got to think if somebody's walking away from that kind of equity, they're still pretty darn happy that they stuck with it.
I agree. That was a great part, though, of walking away from this article is, there's great information in the article, but it makes us want to stand up and say, but there's so much more to where we live. We talk about the industries here. Yes, there is New Mexico State. There is the White Sands Missile Range. We also have agriculture. We have the medical community. We have different types of government, NASA, different things that are going on around here. And so it's you wanted to immediately kind of jump in there and tell them a lot more about where we live.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that all of those industries have in common that you just mentioned was that they don't necessarily they don't stop employing people when the economy goes down. Right. Our jobs in Las Cruces are secure. Right. Government expands during recessions typically. NMSU expands during recessions. People can't get jobs. They go back to school. Mm-hmm. So our economy stabilizes much better than a lot of the other economies around the country. And when we have investors talking about Las Cruces and what is the opportunity to invest in Las Cruces, it is that those lows, those downward trends, they're not always as bad as they are in other markets.
We've always we've always felt that way too, that in so many markets across the country, their highs and their lows are extreme. And we find that in our county that we have highs and lows, but it's more in a mid-range as compared to those extremes. And I think that gives, especially we're a retirement community. And so from that perspective, when you have people on fixed incomes, that is a much more comfortable position to have your home and all that equity in when you're in not the extremes of a market.
Absolutely. Yeah, we've certainly had friends around the country that do live in some of those boom or bust type
Yeah.
markets, and talk about stress. That's a stressful place to be as well. And we're a little bit insulated from that, and that's kind of the positive. We're also later to the trends, right? We have an opportunity to see what's happening around the rest of the country,
Right.
and kind of take some of those trends and react maybe a little bit sooner than what our market reacts based
Right.
on what we're seeing elsewhere.
So I have a question for you. We've talked a little bit about the article. We've talked about how we kind of feel as real estate professionals. Let's talk about being a citizen of Doñana County. What do you love about this, about living here?
Gosh, we have amazing weather, right? It's pretty hard to argue our weather.
No extremes.
No extremes. What it really comes down to is the people. People are friendly here. It has that small town mentality still. Even though Las Cruces has grown and the county's grown, and we're no longer this really small town, the people still have that small town mentality. And certainly in New Mexico, we know about the land of Manana. But people are friendly. People have conversations with you at the grocery store and at Walmart and anywhere else you might be. And there's almost always a friendly face. When's the last time you went somewhere and didn't see somebody that you knew?
Well, I will tell you, I moved here from a large city, and saying hello to a neighbor wasn't always the most friendly exchange that occurred. And then we came to Las Cruces. We moved here in 2000, and we moved two small kids, two sons here in 2000. And we weren't here long before we fell in love with it. We knew it's where we wanted to raise our children. Your neighbors were friendly. You enjoyed being out at events with different people. It's a very diverse culture, and that's one of the things I love about where we live as well, is the diversity. I think you and I both have a love for New Mexico State. I know that you serve in many different capacities there and are an alum of the university. I serve on the foundation there and love every minute that I get to spend there. Not my alma mater, but it's kind of my adopted alma mater.
Yeah, and one of the things that I love that you said is that you chose to raise your family here. And I think that's important. You very easily could have taken a job that took you out of state to another location, probably in some cases a better job opportunity, but you chose Las Cruces as a place that you wanted to raise your children, and I think that speaks volume of what we are here in Las Cruces and the people in Las Cruces.
Yeah. Well, and I think that one of the things, we've talked about what we love. I think that both you and I have spoken on this topic before and agree that we would love to see our local city council, our county commission, our state really be more involved in economic development, really paving the way, because we live in such a great place, to pave the way for businesses to want to come here. And then when we talk about the economics of housing and all the opportunities, that's just better for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that I always go to is that when you raise your family here, and we have multiple generations of people that have raised their families here, what they always come back to is, hey, I want my kids to be able to come back here. I want my grandkids to come back here. As an alum of NMSU, wouldn't it be nice if some of those graduates could find the work and the jobs here locally or in the region and not have to leave, our state to be able to find the types of jobs that they deserve and the type of jobs that they prepared for and went to NMSU to get in the first place. I find it hard sometimes when people move here from other places. They don't want it to change, right? They don't want it to grow. But people that have been here want those opportunities for their kids, for their grandkids. And certainly I think that Las Cruces has the ability to grow. It has the ability to have a very diverse economy. And I think that with a little push and a little bit different government take on things, we have those opportunities that maybe we see in El Paso or maybe we see in the Tucsons. We have those opportunities here in Las Cruces, and we just need to reach out and grab them.
Right. Well, and I think, a great example that I use often when I talk with people is the Burrell College of Osteopathic Medicine. Opened about 5 years ago here in Las Cruces, and it's a private medical school, but the sole purpose is providing physicians to the border region. So there's an example of private enterprise wanting to come in, build a business, but to better our community. And that's where we need our government, on government level, to be supporting all those opportunities. And then we see the things happen that we want to.
Yeah, absolutely. That has been great for our local economy. Certainly in places like New Mexico, Las Cruces, some of the outlying areas, we need medical, and that was a need that people saw and were able to fill.
Right.
And certainly, you're not going to say it, but certainly your husband John Hummer deserves a lot of the credit for being a big part of that, and certainly continuing to see it prosper and grow. And that's exciting. Those are the things that we need to see here. And certainly we have people like John that have that, those ideas, and then can actually make those things happen. And the more of those things that we see, the greater Las Cruces becomes.
Yeah, well, we're absolutely advocates of it. I know that you and your wife Kayla, they are Z Real Estate, and they have chosen to raise their family right here in our community, and I think that that's just really important. So anything you want to add today?
No, I think that as we see different articles and stuff that come across our desks, and certainly people that send them, there's not any reason to panic, right? And a lot of times when you see something like this, the first thing is like, oh, people are going to quit moving to Las Cruces. There's this article
Right.
that didn't put us in the best light. Las Cruces is going to overcome those things. We're going to overcome those things. Las Cruces are very strong, and they certainly are resilient. And we're going to continue to fight through it, just like Mrs. Downes fought through when things were difficult and they needed to move. She managed to keep the house, build the equity in the house, and now she's sitting in a pretty good position, even if it did take a little bit longer than she would have liked.
Yes, I totally agree, and I think you just wrapped that up perfectly, Zane. So let's plan on having some more conversations with people, write more articles about Las Cruces.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right.
I appreciate it.
Thanks.